Shalom. Being a good person does not make you wealthy, and Torah never said it would. That belief is why so many sincere people stay stuck. This statement disturbs people because we have been taught that goodness should naturally lead to prosperity. We expect moral behavior to generate material reward. We believe that if we treat others fairly, give to charity, and live ethically, financial abundance should follow. This expectation feels reasonable, even spiritual, yet it creates profound confusion when good people struggle financially while those with questionable ethics accumulate wealth. The mistake lies in confusing two entirely separate systems. We assume that moral excellence and economic law operate under the same principles. We believe that the universe rewards virtue with prosperity. This assumption feels true because we want justice to govern all outcomes. We want moral order to determine material results. But Torah reveals that this connection does not exist in the way we imagine. Torah presents a binary that most people never learn. Morality does not create wealth. Wisdom creates wealth. These operate as distinct systems with different laws, different consequences, and different purposes. Morality governs our relationship with others and with the divine. Wisdom governs our relationship with reality, including economic reality. Both are essential, but they function independently. This separation feels uncomfortable because we prefer simple cause and effect relationships. We want goodness to guarantee security. We want ethical behavior to produce predictable rewards. We want moral superiority to translate into material advantage. But Torah law operates with precision, not sentiment. It reveals how systems actually function, not how we wish they functioned. The confusion begins early. We teach children that good behavior leads to good outcomes. We tell them that honesty pays off, that hard work guarantees success, that treating people well ensures prosperity. These messages create expectations that adult experience often contradicts. Good people face financial hardship. Ethical businesses sometimes fail, while corrupt ones thrive. Generous individuals struggle, while selfish ones accumulate wealth. This contradiction creates several destructive responses. Some good people conclude they are not good enough, that their financial struggles reflect hidden moral failures. They search for character flaws to explain their economic circumstances. They assume that prosperity would come if they could just be better people. This creates shame and self-doubt that serves no constructive purpose. Others develop resentment toward those who prosper despite apparent moral shortcomings. They cannot understand why dishonest people succeed while they struggle. They feel cheated by a system that seems to reward bad behavior and punish virtue. This resentment poisons their character and damages their relationships without improving their circumstances. A third group abandons moral standards entirely. They conclude that ethics are obstacles to wealth. They assume that success requires compromising integrity. They believe that good people finish last by choice, that prosperity demands moral flexibility. This response destroys both character and sustainable success. All three responses stem from the same false assumption that morality and economics operate under unified principles. Torah rejects this assumption completely. It teaches that moral law and economic law are separate systems that must be understood independently. Confusing them creates problems in both areas. Moral law governs our obligations to others. It determines whether our actions are right or wrong, regardless of consequences. It establishes standards of behavior that remain constant across circumstances. Moral law answers the question, how should I treat other people? The answer does not depend on whether moral behavior produces wealth. Economic law governs the creation, preservation, and transfer of value. It determines whether financial strategies work or fail. It establishes principles that operate independently of the moral character of those who use them. Economic law answers the question, how does wealth actually function? The answer does not depend on the moral worth of those who possess it. Torah wisdom recognizes both systems as legitimate but distinct. It does not suggest that moral people should ignore economic principles. It does not teach that wealthy people lack moral obligations. It simply acknowledges that each system has its own laws that must be understood and followed. Consider the biblical figure of Joseph. His rise to power in Egypt demonstrates wisdom-based wealth creation. Joseph did not become second in command because he was morally superior to other slaves. He rose because he understood systems, dream interpretation, agricultural cycles, resource management, and political dynamics. His moral character protected him from certain dangers and earned him trust, but his wisdom created his influence and wealth. Joseph's moral integrity prevented him from betraying Potiphar or compromising his principles in prison. These choices had moral value regardless of their economic consequences, but his economic success came from understanding how grain storage, distribution networks, and governmental authority actually worked. He studied systems and applied principles that would have worked for anyone with sufficient wisdom to implement them. This separation appears throughout Torah literature. Abraham accumulated wealth through strategic thinking about resources, alliances, and geographic positioning. His moral relationship with the divine was separate from his economic relationship with reality. David's wealth came from military and political wisdom, not from psalm-writing ability. Solomon's prosperity resulted from administrative and commercial understanding, not from moral superiority over other kings. None of these figures became wealthy because they were good people. They became wealthy because they understood how wealth works. Their goodness had different purposes: maintaining relationships, preserving integrity, and fulfilling divine obligations. Both aspects of their lives were important, but they operated according to different principles. Modern good people make the wealth mistake when they expect moral behavior to substitute for economic education. They assume that ethical conduct will naturally produce financial stability. They believe that treating customers fairly guarantees business success, that honest communication ensures profitable partnerships, that generous giving creates automatic abundance. These expectations ignore economic law completely. Treating customers fairly is morally correct, but it does not guarantee business success without understanding market dynamics, operational efficiency, competitive positioning, and value creation. Honest communication is ethically essential, but it does not ensure profitable partnerships without grasping negotiation principles, risk assessment, contract structure, and performance metrics. Generous giving fulfills moral obligations, but it does not create automatic abundance without comprehending income generation, expense management, investment principles, and wealth preservation strategies. Moral behavior addresses one set of requirements. Economic wisdom addresses another set entirely. The confusion becomes expensive when good people substitute moral intentions for economic knowledge. They enter business ventures based on ethical motivations rather than market analysis. They make investment decisions based on moral approval rather than financial fundamentals. They structure partnerships based on personal trust rather than legal protection and incentive alignment. These approaches often fail not because the people involved lack character, but because they ignore economic law. Good intentions do not override market forces. Ethical motivations do not substitute for operational competence. Personal trust does not replace structural safeguards and performance accountability. Torah wisdom requires understanding both systems completely. It does not suggest that moral people should abandon ethics to pursue wealth. It teaches that moral people should learn economic principles as thoroughly as they study moral ones. It does not create conflict between ethics and prosperity. It eliminates the confusion that prevents people from mastering either area effectively. This mastery requires separating moral questions from economic questions. When facing a business decision, good people must ask two distinct sets of questions. The moral questions include, does this action harm others? Does it violate principles of honesty, fairness, and respect? Does it fulfill my obligations to employees, customers, and partners? These questions determine whether the action is right or wrong. The economic questions are different. Does this action create value? Does it solve real problems for real people? Does it generate sustainable competitive advantages? Can it be implemented profitably and scaled effectively? These questions determine whether the action will produce wealth. Sometimes moral and economic considerations align perfectly. Actions that serve others well also create sustainable profits. Strategies that build trust also generate long-term customer value. Practices that treat employees fairly also improve productivity and retention. When alignment exists, both systems support the same decisions. But alignment is not guaranteed. Some morally correct actions cost money without producing economic returns. Some profitable strategies operate at the edge of ethical acceptability. Torah wisdom teaches that good people must honor both sets of requirements without expecting them to merge automatically. This separation creates clarity instead of confusion. Good people can pursue wealth without compromising integrity by learning economic law as thoroughly as moral law. They can maintain ethical standards without expecting those standards to substitute for business competence. They can build prosperity while serving others by understanding how both systems actually work. The path forward requires education in both areas. A person can be morally upright and financially unstable at the same time. Moral education teaches obligations, principles, and character development that remain constant regardless of circumstances. Economic education teaches systems, strategies, and skills that create value in competitive environments. Both forms of education are necessary for people who want to live with both integrity and prosperity. An ethical business can still fail because its pricing is wrong, its margins are miscalculated, or its structure cannot sustain its obligations. No moral failure is required. The system collapses because economic law was misunderstood. Good people often resist economic education because they fear it will corrupt their character. They worry that learning about profits, competition, and strategic advantage will make them selfish or manipulative. This fear stems from the false assumption that economic knowledge inherently conflicts with moral values. Torah wisdom rejects this assumption. Economic knowledge becomes corrupting only when it is pursued without moral constraints or when it substitutes for moral reasoning. When good people learn economic principles while maintaining ethical boundaries, they become more effective at serving others through wealth creation. They can build businesses that solve real problems, create employment, and generate resources for generous giving. This combination of moral integrity and economic competence creates sustainable prosperity that serves multiple purposes. It enables good people to support their families responsibly, contribute to their communities meaningfully, and pursue their life purposes without financial constraint. It allows them to use wealth as a tool for moral objectives rather than viewing wealth and morality as competing priorities. The structural alignment requires specific changes in thinking and learning. Good people must study economic principles as seriously as they study moral ones. They must develop business skills as intentionally as they develop character traits. They must seek mentorship in wealth creation as actively as they seek guidance in ethical living. This education cannot be superficial or theoretical. It must include practical experience with market dynamics, customer needs, operational challenges, and financial management. Good people must test their understanding through real business activities, learn from failures without abandoning ethical standards, and develop competence through sustained practice and continuous improvement. The process also requires abandoning the expectation that moral behavior will automatically produce economic results. Good people must stop waiting for the universe to reward their virtue with prosperity. They must take responsibility for learning how wealth actually works and implementing that knowledge consistently over time. This shift eliminates the resentment and confusion that poison many good people's relationship with money. They stop feeling cheated by others' success and start focusing on developing their own economic competence. They stop expecting moral superiority to substitute for business education and start pursuing both areas with equal seriousness. The result is not moral compromise, but moral effectiveness. Good people who understand economic law can create more value for others, generate more resources for generous purposes, and build more sustainable prosperity than those who rely on goodness alone. They serve others better because they understand how to create solutions that work in competitive markets. This understanding also prevents the bitterness that often develops when good people struggle financially despite their best intentions. Instead of concluding that the system is unfair or that success requires moral compromise, they recognize that they simply need additional education and skills. This recognition maintains both hope and character while pointing toward constructive action. Torah law establishes this principle with absolute clarity. Moral excellence and economic competence operate as separate systems that must be mastered independently. Good people who want to build wealth must learn economic principles as thoroughly as moral ones. They must develop business skills as intentionally as character traits. They must understand market dynamics as clearly as ethical obligations. This law protects both morality and prosperity by preventing the confusion that undermines both. It allows good people to pursue wealth without compromising integrity and to maintain ethical standards without expecting those standards to substitute for economic competence. It creates sustainable alignment between doing good and doing well by recognizing that each requires different knowledge and skills. The law also eliminates false expectations that create disappointment and resentment. Good people who understand that morality and economics operate separately will not expect virtue to guarantee prosperity or assume that wealth indicates moral superiority. They will pursue both areas with appropriate methods and realistic expectations. Torah wisdom thus provides a framework for good people to build wealth without moral compromise and maintain integrity without financial limitation. It teaches that wisdom, not morality, creates wealth, while ensuring that both wisdom and morality receive the respect and attention they deserve. This understanding transforms the relationship between ethics and economics from confused competition into clear cooperation. Torah never promised that goodness creates wealth. It promised that wisdom does.